You are watching a brand new episode of Aid Thompson and Other Disappointments, brought to you in association with globalbutterflies.com, helping your business to become more trans and non-binary inclusive. Also, funk27.co.uk, discontent providers. Go check it out. Also, whilst you're here, before we get started, maybe check the join button on YouTube. I've started like a little community. It's a bit like Patreon. It's exactly the same as Patreon. If you click join, then there's stuff. Just check it out. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Aid Thompson and Other Disappointments, your twice, sometimes thrice weekly cannonball dive bomb into the worlds of news, politics, dystopia, and all things awful. What's going on out there in politics land? Out in the formerly Great Britain. It's a weird place right now, isn't it? The UK and also Westminster. It's a place where policies that don't make economic or political sense win seemingly unwavering support from the governing party because reasons. That's why. Just reasons. I guess we'll find out what those reasons are at the New Year's honours. Call me a raging cynic if you must. But yes, and it's a place, the UK and Westminster, it's a place where the underlying policy, the foundation of this ridiculous policy, the fly them off to Rwanda policy, is, stop the boats, isn't it? And that underlying policy is heralded as a priority for the British people. Again and again on every news show, every morning breakfast rounds, politician and minister, again and again. It's just a priority for the British people. The British people expect this, backed up by no evidence whatsoever. Is it challenged by the journalists? No. No. I mean, I would like to see it challenged. I would like to see a journalist just once, just a Kay Burley or, I was about to say Piers Morgan. He's not on Good Morning Britain anymore, is he? I'd like to see just one morning journalist just go, I mean, you keep saying it's a priority for the British people, but I just checked Statista, and it's weird because it says right here that the priorities for the British people, according to this survey and every other discernible survey out there, is the NHS, social care, hospitals, GPs, and the economy. So it's just weird that you keep saying that this is a priority for the British people when it's so clearly not the priority. Why are you wasting your time banging on about dinghies when these are the things that people actually care? Stop changing the subject. You and your statistics and your charts and your survey, you bloody expert. But of course, that exchange has not happened and it will not happen. Instead, what will we get? What do we get? We get, this is a priority for the British people and the British people expect this. And then the morning journalists on the sofa will go, right, yeah, okay, cool, yeah. Yeah, no, makes perfect sense. Dinghies, you say? Oh, yeah, no, sounds very serious. So yeah, we have policies that make no political or economic sense, underpinned by policies that are not a priority for the British people. So there's that one up there, this one down. It's a veritable Jenga tower of parliamentary nonsense. And we are here, dear listeners, once again to pull away at those bricks. And I don't know, hopefully the whole thing will collapse and we can all move on. If it is your first time tuning in, don't be a stranger. Do drop me a comment on YouTube, or give me tag me on Twitter, say hello. I'm on Twitter, I'm on TikTok and YouTube primarily. I'm also on Instagram, but I don't really I post stuff on there, but it's not really my bag. I'll leave that to Danny Price. He's the expert at Instagram. But yeah, if you've just found this podcast on Apple Podcasts, I also do punk politics videos on YouTube. and I do like an alternative paper review most mornings. So there you go. If you like the podcast and you like a bit of satire, you know, if you like a healthy dose of what I like to playfully refer to as snarkasm, then maybe, you know, go check those out as well. So yeah. What was I talking about now? What is happening out there? What is in the news? What can we talk about this time? So there was obviously the big Rwanda vote last night as I'm recording this. And, you know, I don't want to spend too much time on that, going into it in too much more detail. It's depressing enough already, isn't it? And we all kind of know the ins and outs of it by this point, I think. But, you know, for the benefit of those who are maybe not so, you know, closely ears pinned to the pulse of British parliamentary news and developments, this Rwanda Bill got through because Sunak made a load of promises to people. That's all it is. A load of bargaining going on. A load of promises. Some of which he'll be able to keep. You know, if it's better funding for a thing in whoever's vote he's bought's constituency, you know, he might be able to keep that promise. Some of it less so. If it's, you know, peerages. You know, well, you know, if you're coming up to retirement, you know, you've already said you're going to stand down at the next election. I mean, if you help me out here, maybe you could be in line for a peerage, old boy. You know, it's like that sort of thing. You scratch my back. And then there's the final option, the final sort of compromise that he made, probably, undoubtedly, to a few of them last night, would be diluting the core components of this specific policy. Like, I mean, that is actually pretty funny, I think. I mean, there's a lot of darkness to this policy. There's a lot of stuff to be depressed about, but there is some humour in it too. You know, I like the way that it's been heralded a victory for the Prime Minister on the front page of the Express. Like, PM's victory. When in actual fact, it's that the Prime Minister has capitulated and we still don't even know what he's giving away. To have skated through that vote. You know, like, what has it costed him? What has it costed us? What deals has he struck? What god-awful deal? Like, if Mark Francois had you over a barrel... Like, if you had to get Mark Francois on side, what would you end up promising that man? You know? Like, what kind of stuff is he into? You know, like, we ask the difficult questions on this show. Like, if you had to win Mark Francois over, what might you be forced to do? God only knows. God and Rishi Sunak. So we know that deals were done, right? We don't know what they were yet. We do know the Star Chamber, God help me, the 5 families have already said that they will vote this thing down. They will kill it if it doesn't break international law and decimate our standing on the world stage, which, you know, like, a lot of people have been critical of the ERG playing such a dominant role in his whole thing. You know, a lot of people are like, well, hang on a second. Hang on, like, why is the ERG, you know, the European Research Group, getting so much airtime in a thing about Rwanda? You know, this isn't Brexit. The ERG, like, Brexit's in the past. What have the European Research Group got to do with this? A lot of people are saying. And you know what? To those people, I say this. If you'll just indulge me, okay? To those people, I say... Are you kidding? Are you kidding? Like, we are talking about soiling our reputation as a geopolitical player on the world stage and breaking laws in limited and specific but very self-beneficial ways. This is absolutely their jam, son. I mean, in terms of geopolitical embarrassment and breaking the law, The only thing that shocks me about Francois is that he isn't advocating us re-invading the colonies. Anyway, so the Star Chamber, the 5 families are saying that they're going to vote this thing down when it comes back in January. The 5 family. Like I was saying yesterday, like, does this guy know that the 5 families is actually a New York City, like, crime moniker? You know that? Like, is it sort of like sometimes stand-ups think that they've written a joke and they like it's come from somewhere else but they just don't really remember it and they misinterpret it as something that they've just thought of. Like, and then they get accused of joke stealing. Like, hey, that was my joke. Oh, really? Oh, I forgot that I saw you. I thought that I just thought of it, you know? There's a whole thing around that. But it's a similar thing with Mark Francois where he's heard somebody somewhere refer to, like, the 5 families in a kind of powerful, influential, half scary kind of context. And now when he's got these 5 tribes or 5 subsets, it's like come to him. He's like, we should call ourselves the 5 families. You know, is that sort of thing? Do you think? But anyway, yesterday I was like, you know, does he know that the 5 families is a New York crime family thing? You know, does he know that? I know he's not the most worldly of fellows. You know, I know his love of history and foreign countries probably starts and stops at Spitfires shooting down German Luftwaffes or whatever they were called down in the 1940s. But couldn't one of his aides just tell him, just pull him aside, you know? Like, listen, Mark, listen, this 5 families thing, it sounds a bit mafia. It doesn't sound good, mate. A bit what? A bit mafia, mate. You know, it's you know, the way the 5 Italian mafia families in New York is that's how you describe them, the 5 families, which is fine. You know, if you want the Conservative Party to be more associated with organised crime, I mean, you know, the looting and the corruption, like, you're not doing a bad job already. You know, if you want to, then by all means, you know, top it off with an appropriate label. But if you don't want to attract connotations of organised crime, maybe the 5 families is a bad look. Do you think? I don't know, man. Like, I like to feel like I personally don't subscribe to this horrible penchant that we have in this country of, you know, calling people names and then having those names elicit like emotional reactions, you know, and it's, you know, just a few words designed to purely make somebody feel bad. It's like, honestly, I feel like if you go around calling yourself the Spartans or like the Star Chamber, I feel like some sort of Spanish Inquisition or like Beetlejuice thing should kick in where they just bundle you up in canvas and dump your body in a well. I'm sorry, like, I know that sounds harsh, but truly, I feel like if you label yourself the Spartans, then that will elicit an emotional reaction in me, and you need to anticipate that. And don't be tone policing me for saying this stuff. Bloody snowflakes. Can't say anything anymore. Etc, etc. Anyway, so, what were today's big stories? Let's try and keep this loosely topical. So, obviously the big story was the Rwanda vote last night. Victory for Sunak, etc. But also today's big stories were, I think PMQs was quite fun this afternoon. I saw Rishi Sunak was sort of caught, like, I want to say snarling. I don't know if that's the right word. Rishi Sunak snarling. Some people could do snarling. You know, this next section or segment will not be a critique of snarling in and of itself. Like the Californian rapper The Game, if you're familiar, he does a great snarl. He's got a really good snarl on him. I think Avril Lavigne as well, bizarrely. Like she was quite a good snarler, I seem to remember. Who else does a good snarl? Pink, the singer, did a pretty good snarl in a couple of like music. And yes, look, I am aware that all of my pop culture references are firmly anchored in the early noughties, but I am 43, so just, this isn't one extra, for God's sake. Anyway, I suppose my point is, some people can do a good snarl, but I'm not sure that the Prime Minister is one of them. So here's what happened. So PMQ started, and Sunak was cheered. Loud, booming cheers, whoa, from his tribe. Or perhaps all of his 5 families, as it was. Like, everyone on that side of the House of Commons was cheering him on. And as The Guardian reported, it's a bit bizarre, isn't it? This weakened, embattled Prime Minister, and everyone was like, yeah, Rishi, go on, son. You won the vote. You hero. With your 2-day campaign of unrelenting appeasement. What a visionary. Go on. Anyway, and then he arrived, and he did his little ditty where he pretends that we've all had some big tax cuts, even though we're heading for this all-time, post-war tax high. So that's always fun to listen to. And then, anyway, Starmer then asked him about homelessness, which I don't know how many of you were actually aware of this, but, thanks to the cost of living crisis and the housing crisis, creating that crunch on stock, like there's nowhere near enough new 1-bed and 2-bed, flats or like little houses, starter homes being built, or even land being like greenlit to be built on. Like, it's just not. I think Michael Gove today even like relaxed the house building targets even further. It's like, what are you doing? And I thought he was one of the few that, in terms of housing and the challenges that the housing sector faced, I thought he was one of the few that actually understood some stuff because of how he handled himself around the leasehold stuff, But anyway, evidently they need some more money coming in from like property people-y, you know how it works. So because of the housing crisis and the cost of living crisis and the mortgage crisis as well, where the Bank of England hiked rates 13 times and it sent mortgages soaring, and subsequently now rents are exploding because so many rented properties are actually buy to let. They're purchased, they're on a mortgage. So when that mortgage goes up, your rent goes up by 500 quid or 700 quid if you're very unlucky. But anyway, so homelessness in the UK is kind of exploding. It has never been bigger. Guys, all homelessness is popular now. It's up 25% from last year, even. In some parts, it's more. If you go give Liam Thorpe a follow on Twitter, he's a journalist from is it the Liverpool Echo, I want to say? Definitely like Liverpool. And he does some really good stuff, really good reporting, like on-the-ground reporting, about like homelessness in Liverpool. Is absolutely just like floor-jawing, for want of a better phrase. But also Jamie Shapiro is another guy. He writes for the Southern Daily Echo, which they were reporting in Southampton, and Southampton has seen a tripling of rough sleepers. Triple. So, like there's a reason why they wanted to criminalise people like sleeping out rough in tents. All right, it's because they don't have any solutions to actually solve the housing crisis, i.e. build enough homes, rein in the banks. So instead, what's the next best thing they can do is police the ripple effects of all of that. They were seeking, towards the end of Suella Braverman's term as Home Secretary to make it a criminal offence to sleep in your tent out in public. And that is because they know that tent cities are coming. So, anyway, I know that all of this sounds really dark, and, I tried to keep this show at least a little bit gallows humour, kind of fun and funny. And, I want to leave you somewhat uplifted with my content. So I know that all of that sounds really dark and depressing and bad and so on. But you will be relieved to hear that there is actually a silver lining to some of this stuff. There is something to feel good about. And you have to take your wins where you can these days. And that is, the silver lining is that despite it getting murderously cold out there, despite the absence of private rental protections being put in place, all of that was watered down and kicked down the road a few weeks ago. Don't know if you remember. You know, even though the numbers of rough sleepers are soaring, nay, tripling in some areas, the silver lining, this should make you feel good. The silver lining, at least we can take solace in the fact that HSBC, Lloyds, NatWest, Barclays, all of them have made an absolute killing out of the interest rates being hiked up all of that time. They have, oh my God, have they made bank. Should we go through some of them? Uncharacteristically, I have actually prepped them. This will make you really love capitalism. Here we go. You ready? Let's do this. So HSBC more than doubles profits as interest rates soar. Who have we got next? Lloyd's profits jump by 46% amid higher interest rate charges. NatWest first quarter, just the first quarter, first 3 months of the year, profits jump by 50% after interest rate rises. Last but not least, Barclays. Profits have jumped to £4.6 billion. Oh, man. Doesn't that just make you feel good? I feel like we should celebrate. You know, I feel we should celebrate the hard work of the banks. You guys have had a great year, a great couple of years, in fact, since you first started hiking interest rates and broke all of us financially. But you've had a good year. You've worked hard for it. We should celebrate. We should have a street party, shouldn't we? We should have a street. Let's celebrate in the street. I mean, clear the tents away first, of course. I said a party, not a festival. Anyway, yeah. Doesn't that make you just feel better, though? You know, doesn't that just warm the cockles? Where your central heating probably should have. And I know it's a little bit annoying because you're struggling and hungry and, you know, but the thing you got to remember, guys, dear listeners, the thing that you have to remember is that they have worked so hard for that money. All right. You know, those passive income shareholders and pensiony, dividendy old bastards, they worked really hard for that. Clearly they have. So rest assured, your money is going to be put to much, much better use via the, bonuses of bankers, I guess, who are going to spend it on, I don't know, like a custom-built Bentley, maybe, or getting twin teenage hostesses shipped in from Sweden, or, you know, whatever else it is that billionaire bankers waste it all on. I mean, you know, I say waste, it'll trickle down, right? That's how it works. That's what I'm told. Is it'll trickle down, like they rob you of your money that you needed to pay your rent, but then they hand it to people who are already rich, like these bankers, who then spend it on sick and twisted stuff, like the twins. But then the twins will get paid, and then they will spend it on, you know, alcoholism, probably. Like, whatever it takes to numb the pain from the traumatic experience of going twos up on a 67-year-old CFO of Fairfax Smythe Bank or wherever. Wherever is the bank that is not the one that I've just made up that I could get sued for. And then, you know, the alcohol company that they spent the money on, they make a bit more money, and then they pay their employees the exact same amount as last year. You know, they just hive it all off for themselves and their own bonuses and stuff. And then they savage the healthcare benefits of all of the breweries' employees. And anyway, so the system works, is what I think we're supposed to believe. The system works, guys. So, where was I? Oh, yes. So, PMQs. If this is your first time listening, you're going to have to get used to me going off on tangents here. So PMQs. So Starmer raises homelessness as one of his questions. And he gives examples of, you know, heartbreaking Christmas situations. And it's a somber thing. And he's speaking earnestly. And he's trying to engage, I guess, a sort of, you know, this is absolutely heartbreaking. And what are we going to do to fix this? You know, how could you have allowed this to go so spectacularly wrong? It's like that sort of vibe. Earnestly, quiet, somber, right? And Sunak just snaps. Like, he can't... I tell you what the problem is, right? He can't access the empathy that you need to be able to employ to meet Starmer on that level. Do you understand what I mean? Like, he doesn't have that in his brain. So I think that's what it is. Or it could be, the other possibility is that, you know, it's sort of, his ego is flipping to anger because he knows he has no recourse, you know, to fight back. That's why it sort of flips, like, you know, it's like it is his party that's been in power, right? It is his party's doing or undoing, as the case may be. So, like, it's a bit like if somebody accuses you of something that you know that you did do, you know, like, and you're only 12. Let's say you're 12 years old and someone accuses you of, you know, eating all the chocolate or whatever, and you trip switch, like, you're not emotionally intelligent enough to be able to handle an accusation that you know you did, you deserve the accusation for. And so instead you trip switch to anger because you're only 12. Like, no, I didn't. Like, why'd you accuse me of that? I'm so insulted and offended. But, you know, it's like that sort of thing. I don't know which it is, though, for Sunak in PMQs. Is it childishness and ego? Or is it a lack of empathy? It could, I mean, it's possibly both, right? But either way, it was ridiculous. You know, with Prime Minister, the homelessness problem in the UK is soaring. People are going to have a cold, miserable, broke Christmas. Some of them on the streets, some of them with children. How has it got this bad? How dare you come into this house and speak this oikish, plebbish drivel to your betters? Bow down! Bow down and kiss the ring, you soot-gargling vagrant! Was very much the the vibe, the demeanour he was giving off. So was it ego and childishness, or was it a total lack of empathy? I don't know. But either way, yeah, what we got wasn't a sort of, you know, Sunakkian victory. Although I'm sure that is precisely how it will be reported in tomorrow morning's Express. No, what we got was a snarl, ladies and gents. We got a Sunakkian snarl. Out went the polite, if slightly petulant head boy kind of vibe, and in came the toffee and bullish snarl, guys. And I've not seen it before. Like, he always comes across as, like, impatient and, like, he can't be... If you just it's quite simple, really. You know, he's got that sort of, I'm too intelligent and you're really wasting my time by asking me these questions. He's got that sort of thing to him, hasn't he? But that sort of left the building. And instead, we were treated to a Sunakkian snarl. The mask slipped, if you will. Angry Rishi came out to play today at PMQs, like an American Bully XL or whatever, you know? I found myself going like, look out, Rishi, look out! Or you might have to launch a weird distraction campaign to ban yourself. You clown. I mean, you have to see this snarl, guys. Maybe I'm bigging it up a bit too much, but I thought it was hilarious. And it was immediately predictably, like, all over Twitter with memes and, you know, the snarl being, like, positioned. Have you seen the meme of, I think it's Lindsay Lohan looking really upset, going like that, and they, you know, sort of photoshopped his face on the top. He looked like somebody that's never snarled before, you know, if I'm honest. I think that was the sort of vibe I read from it. He looked like somebody, you know, like it's his first time pretending to be angry. You know when you meet people who just don't suit being angry, and then when you piss them off, they get angry, but it doesn't have the desired effect. It doesn't scare you, or it doesn't make you think, oh my God, I've really upset this person. I should probably apologize. Like, actually, it makes you go like, you know, you should calm down, because like you don't do angry well. Like, I can hear your voice quivering and you're all red and flushed in the face. Like, angry isn't you, bro. You know, it's kind of like that. Like, I don't know. Maybe it's unfair. Maybe he was just having a bad day, you know? Maybe his high heels were on too tight or something. The last thing I wanted to talk about tonight was this sort of weird era that we found ourselves in of a kind of Corpro Politics. I don't know if I'm phrasing that right. Probably not. Or politico-corporization, or so. Like, there's a word. There's going to be somebody way more articulate and eloquent than me will coin this. It'll be a Lewis Goodall or an Ian Dunt or, you know, Bungle from... What was the show that... I can't even remember the name of the shows that, like, Bungles. That's how inarticulate and tired I am tonight. But you know what I'm getting at is the sort of politicization of corporations. And so on. And I suppose this starts off with things like, you know, Human Rights Act, HR legislation, protections, diversity training. I could imagine the right wing kind of ranting about it in that regard. But what I'm more interested in, and what sort of struck me earlier, was the focus that is immediately thrown on the Gary Lineker and BBC stuff, which is just firing up all over again. Like we hadn't already gone down this road and resolved this and embarrassed the right wingers enough 6 months ago or whenever it was. Now we have to come. We were in a cul-de-sac. Are we going to revisit this whole thing? Like for the benefit of those who didn't see my video this afternoon and who maybe just catch the podcast, like the podcast is enough for you. God bless you. Basically where we're at, you know, before when this reared its head, Gary Lineker said something. It was seen as highly political. The right-wing rags tried to rein him in. The BBC said, oh, we're going to take this very seriously, and suspended him, pulled him off Match of the Day. And then a week later, they came back to him and said, well, okay, I mean, would you come back? Like, Gary Lineker didn't have to apologise. The BBC just allowed him back. And all because he is a contractor on a different set of terms and conditions, and contractors who work in non-news and current affairs can basically say what they like. He hasn't signed up to anything that says he has to be restricted, and as long as it's in his personal life and on his own personal social media, ergo, you're not on Match of the Day saying, F the Tories, right? Then you're free to do as you please. But they're not content with that. Now, Gary Lineker has sort of clapped back to Grant Shapps, because Shapps has sort of criticised him, and Lineker has said, well, you know, I'm not sure I'm really going to take much notice of a guy who walks around with like 4 different pseudonyms, you know, who am I even talking to, sort of thing. That's not his joke, that's mine. But you get the point. He sort of read up at Grant Shapps, and now all of the same faces from all of the same publications are saying, what's to be done about this insolent Gary Lineker? That was a word used, an actual word used in the Telegraph this morning. Insolent Gary Lineker. Like, they feel like there's teacher energy to that, isn't it? There's teacher energy, angry mum energy to it. What's to be done with this insolent boy? This insolent Gary Lineker. Anyway, so that's all of the context that you need to know. But it's the politicization of these corporations that I'm really interested in, because it's like, why do we care so much? Or rather, why do the right wingers pretend to care so much about what this contractor does on his social media? You know? I mean, I suppose the easy answer to that question is they care about it because it's the BBC, and they hate the BBC for ideological reasons, so this is an opportunity to bash the Beeb while attempting to neutralise one of the right's most outspoken critics, i.e. Gary Lineker is a lefty, or certainly seen as one, and this is their way of sort of trying to get him to get back in his box. Then on the flip side, so you've got BBC over here, then you've got ITV, right? Now, Nigel Farage has just left the I'm a Celebrity jungle, and he is on the front pages of various newspapers, like, you know, don't make me go to war with ITV. Don't make me start a war, ITV, you know, and he's talking directly to the CEO or like the head of programming for ITV. And he's like, you know, the last person that picked a fight with me was Dame, whatever her name was, from NatWest. And that didn't turn out too well for her. So I'm willing to leave this here. I'll be the bigger man, but just stop what you do. Like, he's picking a fight with them and basically telling ITV to get back in their box. And I think this is a really interesting moment, isn't it? Because you've got the right trying to bash the BBC and tell Lineker to get back in his box. The right telling ITV, you stop doing this, don't criticise Nigel, you get back in your box. And it really sort of speaks to this weird new conservatism that is no longer a friend to business. You know, I don't need to rehash all of the Boris Johnson F business stuff, right? But they're no longer a friend to business they're seemingly no longer a friend to free speech, even though they, claim to be at every possible opportunity. What about free speech? What about this? But, clearly they're not in favour of Gary Lineker sharing his opinions. Nigel Farage has taken some umbrage with the ITV chap sharing his opinions. So out goes business, or close proximity to business. Out goes free speech. Out goes the concept of we don't want to be big state. We don't want state overreach, because they're literally reaching in to couples and families and splitting them up. So out goes family values. What core pillars of conservatism remain in 2023 going into 2024? What core pillars are there of what do they actually stand for? For all of the talk of, or by Robert Jenrick last week, 7 days ago, he resigned, right, from the government as Minister for Immigration. 7 days ago, he said, this deal is unworkable and it is against my principles. I cannot work with it. I'm going to have to resign as immigration minister. Some would say he was privately striking a deal with Suella Braverman, and she was going to try and be Tory leader, and he was going to be, or was promised, Home Secretary. But I'm sure she would never do a dirty deal behind the scenes, the likes of which she already struck with Rishi Sunak when he was going to be leader. But, anyway, 7 days ago, Jenrick resigns because this deal was against his core principles. And now, after last night's vote, he reverse ferreted and supported it. So, the guy who resigned because the deal was against his principles has not only gone back to support it, reneging on his own principle that the deal was against, that he helped construct. Do you see what I'm getting at? Here, not only does the Conservative Party not have principles, there are no more core components of conservatism exhibited in the modern Tory party, but even their ministers, their supporting cast, don't have principles when talking about their own principles. What does the modern Conservative Party actually stand for? And this is I guess, the final thought, really, if this show could be pretentious enough to pretend to leave you with the final thought, is that in a country that has a governing Conservative Party and where all of the core pillars of conservatism no longer exist, i.e. family values, small state, small government, no state overreach, close proximity to business, fiscal responsibility. I didn't even talk about that. I don't need to, do I? I mean, we could barely say conservatives and fiscal responsibility within the same sentence without bursting out laughing. But where all of these core components are absent, what is left that the Conservative Party is standing for other than literally self-preservation, which actually is, in this day and age, in this parliament, with this administration, is actually fascism? What are we actually talking about now? Can we say the F word comfortably? Not that F word, YouTube algo, that consistently punishes me. Every video now I upload is flagged as limited view. Anyway, you get my point. Once you remove all of the core pillars of conservatism, and we can no longer even half seriously claim that it reflects any of these core principles, what is left other than this desperation to cling on to power, no matter if you disenfranchise voters, no matter if you're striking hooky deals with publishers of newspapers, no matter if you're getting stories pulled because they might be embarrassing to you if they ended up on the front page of the Times, no matter if you are looting the public purse for every day that you're still in power because you're worried that once you get ejected from power, then you might not have your hands on that money anymore, What is actually left? Can we comfortably call the Conservative Party fascists now? I actually think we can, and I think going forward I will. Anyway, that's it for this one. Thank you so much for listening, guys. I will be back Friday night with a guested show. No idea who that is yet. I'm going to have to jump on the old WhatsApps and start begging people to appear. I'm going to keep doing the punk politics videos. I did a couple of polls. I did one on YouTube and I did one on Twitter. And I said, which of the videos, the content that I put out, do you like the most? What's your favourite? I said punk politics, guested podcasts, solo podcasts like this one, or the alternative paper review. So they're quite different products, right? Because the guested shows are just pretty laid back. I just ask questions and we try to have a decent conversation for an hour. The solo ones are like this one, right? They take a bit of prep, but it's okay. I enjoy doing them. But it's basically an hour of stand-up. It's like me trying to make myself laugh with the news, right? Then you got the paper review, which is like short, quick, hard-hitting, like 3 minutes, 5 minutes long. And then finally you got Punk Politics, which is a lot of fun to put together, but it takes a long time to make one of those. So anyway, I put these things out, and on both polls, it was like Punk Politics came out like staggeringly in front. And I'm just wondering if, I should adjust things and just spend all my time doing Punk Politics, with a few little solo show podcasts or something, like tone down one so I've got time to spend on the other. So I don't know, it'd be really useful to you guys if you do just listen to the podcast and you don't follow me on Twitter or YouTube, whatever. Like now would be a really good time for you to get in touch and just let me know if you are enjoying these, if you'd like me to keep doing them, because it's time away from my kids, it's time away from editing, and I just want to make sure that I'm giving you guys the stuff that you are actually interested in. So there's that. Anyway, once again, big shout, thank you to all of my patrons. Thank you so much for continuing your support of the show. Quickly run through you now. Rachel Harris, Bowman, Kai, Chris D, David Voice, Martin Maracas, Mojo Sabian, Peter Del Monte, who was in the chat the other night, as was Mojo Sabian, Pingu, Stuart, T-Rex, Aaron, Aid, or Addy, I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. He's super new. He's just joined the Patreon last week. Alex Suter, Jeff McGow, MJ Nichols just joined us, also on the Patreon last week. What's up, MJ? Ned Berg, Sarah Setters, Simon Flack, Ailsa, Malcolm, Rodri, and Kerry. Thank you so much, guys. Once again, I'll be back Friday night. Take care of yourselves. Until next time, I'm out this Mother Hubbard.